just to let you know that this committee, the Enrollment Management Committee, and other Shared Governance Committee meetings are going to be videotaped from now on, so that they can be posted on the website, and this information and this process can be shared with the greater college community. So I hope that you were warned and you put on your makeup, get on your nice face. But anyway, here we are. Let's go around and
Go live.
and co-chair. It's live. You're on.
No, but I mean, is it on the website live?
Is it on the website live? I don't know the answer to that.
Streaming?
Streaming, no.
We're
No,
not streaming?
it's
Oh,
not.
we're so
It's taped.
old-fashioned.
But it'll be up on the site very, very quickly, though.
Okay. So there is a site, the roster sheet circulating. If I'm making sure that your name is on there and that you signed. And I do want to bring you up to date on a couple of participants. I did get in touch with Manny Perea, who served on this committee last year. He was on here as a faculty member representing CTE, basic skills, the basic skills programs. But he is no longer able to continue, and so I have asked Beverly Tate to take his place, and she has agreed to do so, so she will be joining us from now on. Other than that, I think that's the only change at this point. Okay, you have a copy of the minutes, a paper copy. I understand that we thought that the electronic version had been sent to you, but apparently not. So you do have a paper copy. If you would look that over very quickly and let us know if there are any changes or corrections that need to be made to the minutes from our last meeting.
I think I was here at the last meeting.
That was 2 weeks ago. I think it was, what date was that, Judy?
The 13th.
13th? Okay. It's Shelley.
Yes, I was here.
That's Shelley. Okay. Any other corrections? Okay. So the second item on today's agenda is we have an update on enrollment management, and my co-chair, Bob Miller, is going to present that.
Okay, thank you, Ed. I just came from an executive committee meeting, and we were talking about all kinds of things, obviously. And one of the things that I shared with the executive committee is kind of a precursor to this discussion that I'm going to share with you briefly, which is that next year, as we look at our workload reduction, we have to plan for it. And to be clear, in 11-12, we have FTES of 19,634 is our current FTES. As we go into 12-13, based upon the budgets that's been presented to us thus far, we're going to have to reduce our 19,634 by 1,150 FTES, 1150, which would bring us down to something on the order of 18,484 FTES. Now currently, this year, we have 5,334 sections that we offered through the 11-12 year. In order to get us to where we need to be next year, we would have to reduce by 546 sections, bringing us down to a total of 4,788 sections. Now, through the President's graduation fund, which you're going to be hearing more about, it may very well be that we can add roughly another 200 sections back in, but at the moment that's not guaranteed, and because that's going to be based upon soft money that comes in from donations and what have you. So the college has got to build a schedule next year on the basis of 4,788 sections, give or take, or 84. We're still playing with the math, but it's approximately 4,784 sections, down from this year of 5,334. So if I did the math correctly, that's about a 546 section reduction. So that's obviously serious and a concern, but you know, it is our reality, and of course our reality changes should the governor's tax initiative pass in November, but for now we obviously can't count on that. So at the board meeting last week, and do we have a clicker or something here?
I got it.
Oh, okay, thank you. So at the board meeting, thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Thank you. At the board meeting last week, I presented a report. And basically, this is a 6-year overview of our credit sections in FTES, starting in 2006-07, and then taking us down to where we ended up for 11 and 12. So it's broken down by summer, fall, winter, spring, and then the total. And this is where that 5,334 number came to. We had a plan of 5,230, but we went over that by 104 sections. There's all kinds of reasons for that, but we don't need to go into that right now. The difference is that we're 955 FTES over where we should have been. A normal college operation, a healthy college operation, is you want to be over your FTES plan. You want to be over your FTES allocation by about 1 to 2%, generally speaking. Sometimes a little higher than that, but 1 to 2%.
Why is that?
Because you don't know how it's going to land. You want to make sure that you actually collect every nickel you can collect. So if you don't plan a little bit over, then you might end up a little bit below, and you can't collect all the revenue that's due you. So that's
so if we don't meet FTES, there would be a reduction coming to us from the
yeah.
Chancellor's office?
Each one of those FTES is worth 5,436. Is that what it is? $4,536, or something like that. About $4,700 per FTES, and that's our core general fund funding. So, in this case, we had 955 FTES times $4,600. That's the amount of money we didn't collect, because the state is only paying us for this number here, the 19,634. Okay.
And once again, this number is a number that we receive from the Chancellor's office.
That's correct.
We don't have a say in that.
No, we don't have a say in that. And you'll notice that over the years, our funded FTES has kind of gone up and gone down. Prior to 2006-07, going back to 3-4 and then 4-5, at one point the number was as high as 23 or 24,000 FTES that they paid us on. Yes, Chris?
I think it's important to know that 10-11 actually, where we're showing the funded FTS, they haven't actually paid us that yet.
Right.
So they could still take a workload reduction out of that one, which would then shift all of our numbers again.
Right. Because that, the way this, so we have not only the shifting sands of what they might decide to pay us for, but we also have the cash flow issues of when they're actually paying us. But in any event, this is it. Now, next year, as I mentioned, that new number is going to go down to 18,484. So sometime this week, Crystal, Dr. Bell, and myself are going to sit down, and we're going to take a shot at allocating the sections across for next year. And there's other issues about that, calendar issues and some other things, which I won't get into right now. Okay, so that's sort of the basis of where we are now. Next slide, please.
Any questions about this?
Oh,
I
yes,
just wanted to clarify something, Bob. I was looking back at some notes from October 11th meeting, and it was said that some of these sections for this year were funded by SASE. So is that taken into account on this chart?
Yeah.
Do you have some sections funded by another source?
In here and here, in the fall and the spring, we had some sections that were funded not by SASI, but primarily by international education revenue. I don't think we funded any sections directly out of the Student Access and Success Initiative funds. So maybe the minutes are incorrect, but we did fund maybe 40 sections
I think in the spring, we have about 45 in there that were funded by international,
So-
somewhere around there.
Yeah, so if you notice, we're 104 over plan. The majority of those were extra fall and extra spring sections paid for by the F1 visa fund. And the good thing about that is that those F1 visa sections provided some space for local students to get in as well, because it didn't always fill up completely. In fact, we didn't want them to fill up completely with international students. So if it was like a class with a closing number of 30, maybe 12 to 15 were F1 and the balance were local, yes.
But that was really a minimal number because most of the F1 visa students are enrolling in ESL courses.
Right.
So those predominantly we filled with international students. It was like some of the other courses that we added to your schedules.
English,
Biology.
biology, some of those things. Yeah, because Crystal's right. The majority of those are ESL.
But that was probably less than 20 sections.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions about this chart, this information?
Okay, next. So as we go forward, you know, we're calling it now a strategic enrollment management plan. And as I just mentioned, with the 1150 reduction, we have to reduce our section offerings by, at the time I did this, 350 to 400 sections, but this actually implies a larger number now. The number of 5, whatever I said, 546. So that implies a bigger number. The number of sections offered will be commensurate with the FTS funding provided by the state. In other words, whatever the revenue is that supports the sections we're going to offer, that's the number of sections that we're going to plan for and build to. We're not going to get into a section creep situation that further damages, or I should say further jeopardizes our FTES situation. So we can no longer afford to mount sections beyond our funded FTES workload allocation. Next slide, please. So we're going to stop the rollover scheduling concept. And the divisions are going to be asked to create schedules that are based on the so-called completion agenda of degrees, transfers, certificates, and job placements. And we're going to build schedules that move the students out of here as fast as possible towards their goals. Next slide.
Hold on.
Back up.
So this completion agenda will be discussing within the context of this proposed change to the enrollment management policy, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes.
The enrollment priorities policy.
Yes. But also, it's important to keep in mind, not only are we talking about section reductions, but in the budget committee, which met last Friday, they were also talking about other means by which to cut other costs or raise revenue through other means besides section adjustments.
Right. For example, the 45 sections that we ended up removing from the fall semester in hard dollars saved the district about $250,000 in hard, real dollars. Out of a $2.85 million problem, it's a very, very small amount of that. So the balances has to come from other sources as far as this year is concerned. But again, this is talking about 12, 13, and going forward as to how we're going to approach the schedule, how the deans and the vice president of instruction are going to approach the building of the schedule.
So Bob, what
Yes,
that
sir.
means then, if I understand it correctly, division schedule, so when our division determines the classes to be offered,
Right.
it'll be based on priorities of degrees, transfer, CT, job placement?
Right, but not necessarily in this priority, but just in this notion of a completion agenda. These are the 4 things that we ask the deans and the division faculty to think about. How can we move people faster to whatever their end goal is? By offering sections that do that. And we're going to show you something a little later on in this presentation to give you a sense of some of the course-taking behavior.
Anna, do you have a question?
No.
Chris had one, I think.
Can you briefly describe what rollover scheduling means?
Well, apparently, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, this is the way every college does it, is that the way that you start building your schedules, you roll over from one fall to the next, one spring to the next, and you start building that way based upon past history and practice and what have you, which in the normal course of business works and works well, but now that our resources are being as limited as they are, our supply of FTES is in such great demand, now we have to begin about different ways to strategically manage that resource.
But it does assume that what you have offered in the past is what you should continue to offer. And perhaps it is that basic assumption that has to be brought into question.
Which is why we put this notion of completion agenda on the table. what's going to move people faster to their goals. Yes, ma'am.
Since the deans have pretty much finished their second drafts of the fall 2012 schedule, which was based on rollover scheduling with changes there, and it should be clear there are a lot of changes to those rollover schedules. It's not just assume we just move it forward. Is fall going to be affected by this?
Absolutely. And you'll be hearing very shortly on that topic. Yes, ma'am.
Amy, where are you in your?
We've done our second draft. We worked on it over Christmas, and it came back to us, and so it's very far along.
We have documentation that says it'll be published April 23rd to the website, to the public website.
Yeah. We're in a whole new world here, Crystal.
I'd just like to say that Amy is usually one of the first to get her schedules in. And some of the deans do not follow as quickly as she does.
What deadlines do you give to the deans then?
We generally, for each workup, we have 2 workups, which is basically a copy of the rolled schedule. And we give that document to the deans twice with 6 weeks for them to work on it each time, and then allowing for between 4 and 5 weeks of data entry after that. And Amy is one of the people who usually gets it in early. There are several divisions
on time, not early, on time.
On time. There are several divisions who struggle to get it in so that it can be put in so that it can be accurate for the second workup.
But again, what deadline do you give to the deans?
December 22nd was for the first draft, right before Christmas, and most of us turned it in the first week in January because we knew they weren't going to be here. And then the March, this Friday, I think is the second one. This Friday.
And when do you absolutely have to have this done?
Well, the idea is to have as accurate a schedule as possible when it goes live, which is
on this
April
deadline
23rd.
April 23rd.
Yes.
Okay.
But with the caveat that every time we post a schedule publicly, within a day, it's inaccurate, which is one of the reasons why we've gotten rid of the printed schedule class.
Okay, so you're saying that your office then manages the schedule afterwards, and it's you're removing and adding. I see. Okay.
And changing things within, the day of a class, the time of a class, the instructor of a class.
Okay.
And exacerbating all this is that we're in extraordinary times right now, where this is just uncharted territory, and we just have to adjust.
Now, and since these are extraordinary times, I understand why we're doing it. Is this meant to be a permanent solution to a temporary problem? Because as bad as things are, it's not a permanent problem. Eventually the economy will rebound, and eventually things will get better. Who knows when it will happen? So my question is, by implementing this, is this going to be permanent, or is this a temporary solution to a temporary problem?
Well, I don't know if I can be the one.
Well, I think that the policy proposal that we'll look at should be permanent, in the sense that the policy should be an ongoing guideline to the deans and others as to what the priorities should be. What courses are of greater value, you might say, or greater importance for this agenda, for completion of degrees, certificates, and so on. One thing that we have not had here is something other than the Educational Master Plan, which is relatively recent, is we have not had some type of clear guidance as to really what are our priorities, whether we're reducing courses or adding courses.
Well, within that context, I think what we should say is, since what we've been having is a rollover schedule, I think before we say this is going to be permanent, why not take a look at the benefits of rollover, take a look at the benefits of this current plan, and see which one is actually better. And then we can say we can use this one as a permanent. I don't know what the benefits are of a rollover schedule.
Well, Bob Miller's answer to your question is nothing's ever permanent.
Right.
This is where we need to go now per Educational Master Plan, per the Student Success Task Force recommendations, per our limited FTS reality. So as we go forward here, we need to adjust to the times. A year, 2, 3 years from now, there may be different times, and we reassess at that point. I don't think anything is ever engraved in stone forever.
I agree. So then, if we do proceed with this, we should make sure that it states that this is something that is not permanent. Then,
Well, again, we'll be looking at policy and procedures, and they should be, you shouldn't change those, I guess, every month, But yeah, you have to be flexible and make adjustments as things change. I mean, perhaps there'll be some whole new category that we're just not conscious of at this moment.
Right.
And you're right, we can make adjustments later on. Krista?
Well, I know this committee is very limited in its scope, but I think we really need to consider how this is going to impact faculty. There are going to be faculty on this campus whose classes might go away. They may have been hired to teach those classes in some cases. So we're making decisions about sections, but we don't really understand the full impact that this is going to have on our faculty.
Okay. So?
Well, I do think that this is a good idea, because we do have courses in my own division which are not required for anything and aren't even a recommended elective for anything. So I would certainly rather those courses go away than, courses that do pertain to this. And I hope that we're able to look at that kind of a course.
I think you're referring to courses that are known as standalone courses. Courses that are not part of an associate degree, they do not transfer, they don't form part of a CTE program.
Right.
There are a few on the books and that are still offered, and
well, when times were good, we added courses that were nice to have.
What would be an example of that, of these courses you referred to?
I don't know. I know there are some in our division that aren't required for anything. They were just added. I don't know how they got added. They're not in my particular program, but.
Glenna?
Well, I think there are courses that aren't required, but they are totally enriching for the student.
Yes, though they're nice to have.
And so I don't want anything coming off the books. You can go into a stagnant place like so many of our other courses sit there, and then when things pick up again, we can offer them. I hate for us to become a college that doesn't have a well-rounded, really cool, interesting, different kinds of courses that that would really enrich their experience here. So I don't want to get rid of any courses.
We have 1,900 plus courses on the books, and at any given semester might be offering 600, 700, 800 of them, give or take, from what I remember looking at.
If you look at that document we have from the Chancellor's office, though, there's only like 14 core courses or something, and we have like 400 in the inventory.
Let me keep going, because we'll see some more information on that part. So Crystal, next slide, please. The other thing is we want to reference what we call student course taking behavior. Crystal and her folks have generated some nice data by both division in terms of the top courses offered and taken by students in the division, as well as the actual top 25, which I'll show you. So we're going to try and build schedules that are based upon student course taking behavior and offer the maximum number of sections in those courses so we can get more students in there. One of our problems now is we're not offering enough sections of some of these key courses. And that's something, so we're going to go back and look at that. We prepared data tied to our Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, our AAT, Associate of Arts Transfer, Associate of Arts, and Associate of Science Transfer. These are the SB 1440 degrees, the ones that directly go from PCC guarantee enrollment right into Cal State LA and some other CSUs going forward. So they'll have that data. We're also preparing CSU and IGETC general education data as well, because it's a little bit different. So there'll be courses top 25 in those areas. So the next slide will give you an example of that. These are the top 25 courses by enrollment with 3-year aggregated data. Okay, so our number 1 course is English 1A, and it turns out that our number 25 is Theater Arts 7A. And at the end of this thing, you'll see where the other 25 go. But these are, from the point of view of just generic course-taking behavior. Now,
you're talking about seats in these courses?
Talking about seats in these courses.
Filled seats.
Beg your pardon?
Filled
seats. So it'll be different by division a little bit, because in terms of what happens within a division, it's different as we go towards students who are going for STEM majors or certain majors, what have you. But in general, you said 14, these happen to be our 25, that this is what the majority of our students take over a 25-year period as they're moving their way out of this college. It's Chris, and then Glenna, and then Beverly.
I think that you also have to take this data with a grain of salt because this, I mean, with at PCC, almost all of our sections are fully enrolled, and so this is not, obviously English 1A has the most, but at the same time, we also offer the most sections in that class. True. So if we offered more sections in, say, Sociology 1, those would probably be further enrolled because students at this point are looking for whatever class they can get.
But I would counter that by saying introduction. I mean, these are the core classes: English Comp, Poli Sci 1, Speech 1, Intermediate Algebra, Math 31, Psych 1, English 100 for their basic skills, Math 125, again basic skills, Theater Arts 7B because it's an easy course and everybody likes to get their 3 units. Social 1, my point, I could keep going here, but it is absolutely the core courses that everybody needs either for a degree or for transfer.
I guess.
And we need more of these sections is what it boils down to. Kristen, oh, I'm sorry, Glenna.
I have a really hard problem with this one because our core courses aren't showing up there except for Bio 11 because we do offer a lot of them. But I mean, we could add another 15 Chem 1As or Anatomy 25s, but we have no labs. I mean, we are completely constrained by our lab space. Right. So I think it's not really fair. I mean, to me, it's not fair that our courses.
Well, we're not suggesting that this isn't that something's going to get cut.
Okay.
We're just giving you the data.
I just want to say that this is not my favorite slide.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's why in the previous slide we talked about looking at the patterns and seeing what courses students are taking to fulfill the general education pattern, which gives us a much better idea across the college of what's happening.
And we'll be adding that. Because Beverly was first.
Well, yeah, because I'm glad you said that, because when I look at English 400 and the math, I mean, the students are taking those classes, but yet it's at the end, so I wasn't sure why it was, Is that because of spring? You have more in the fall than the spring.
Well, this is 4-year aggregated data.
Yeah.
It's not because we offer fewer courses at English 400.
Right.
No, at any time.
At any time. Okay.
There are always the most English courses sections we have are for 1A, and then 100, and then 400.
Yeah.
And historically, with those rollover data, that's been the enrollment pattern. And when we offer many, many more of 400, they don't fill.
But anyway, the bottom line is that of all of our 900 course or 1,900 courses, and maybe the 600 or 700 that we offer, a semester, these are the top 25 over a 3-year period.
Anna? Yeah, I was just going to point out that all of the transferable courses, those numbered in the low numbers, with the exception of CIS 10, and of course, yeah, the English 400, 100, all of those are transferable and appear on general ed.
Right.
So the students are taking the correct classes. They know what to do.
They will know to get out of here and move on. Right. Okay, next slide, because I don't want to take all the time. Goal will be to mount strong and fall spring schedules. The bulk of the section reductions to achieve that workload will likely occur in the summer and the winter intersessions, because our foundation of what we do is in the fall and the spring as a college. Yes?
I think that the hurt, because winter and summer are such smaller intersessions already, we offer so many few sections, to cut one section in winter affects more students than to cut one section in spring, in as much as more students who plan on taking winter have less options. And so to say that, I agree that fall and spring are our most important, but I think that if we just continue to cut from winter and summer, it's really affecting the students who plan on using those. And it affects your plan, I suppose, more if you cut a class in winter than if you plan on cutting a class in spring. Because in spring, there's so many more classes for you to maybe get instead.
Well, if we go forward with a 3-semester kind of an idea, if we do that, fall, spring, and the following summer would be used to sort of support those students who need what they need to keep going. So in other words, we have a strong fall, we have a strong spring, we allocate whatever we allocate this summer so that summer can be used for the catch-up period or for the get-forward period. And winter might go away, because again, we're getting down to 4,788 sections. So something's got to give somewhere. As it was, our summer and winters were down to like 270, 280 sections. And even that was like a ghost town around this place.
And it's important to note that having a winter period is a fairly new iteration of our scheduling process, and it was done at least to a degree to generate FTES when we were at a point where we needed to generate FTES. So again, like other people have said, nothing is permanent. And so at this time, when we need to be constraining of FTES or managing FTES, from my perspective, it seems like a...
It went into effect back when we were up to that $23,000, $24,000 FTES, and the state had plenty of FTES to go around, and it was actually an administrative decision by Dr. Kostler and others to shoehorn in another revenue-generating opportunity, and that's what they did. Okay. Okay, so Dr. Bell and the deans, close consultation with the Educational Services Office, with this committee, Planning and Priorities Committee, and BRAC, Budget Resource and Allocation Committee, are going to develop a summer and fall schedule that will absorb the 350 to 400 section reduction needed. So somewhere as we develop this thing, we've got to carve what is really 546 sections, but at least 350 and 400 out of the coming summer and fall. Because if we don't, and that tax initiative is not passed, then we are stuck holding the bag. If we do take it out of summer and fall, and the tax initiative passes, then we can add it back in winter and spring, and we can rebuild from there. But we won't be able to if we don't make the massive adjustment now. We won't be able to absorb this 1150 FTES hit.
And I think I can say that it would certainly be easier if we could come up with a plan where we have the option of adding courses rather than reducing.
Right. Next slide.
Bob?
Oh, sorry, yes.
My dilemma is this. So we're talking about reducing sections because of the problem. 2 weeks ago when President Rocha mentioned in his budget reality check that we're going to put in a freeze on hiring. Last week, we were told that we're going to form a committee to hire a history professor. So, 1 week I'm being told one thing, next another. So, why would we hire someone when we're reducing so many sections?
Here's two responses. First of all, hiring freeze to me is a scary thing for a couple of reasons. One, whether we're serving 25,000 students or 30,000 students, there's basic positions we have to run the institution. So sometimes you're just going to have to hire certain people in certain areas. Regarding the faculty, we're going to verify this again, but we have by law something called a full-time faculty obligation number, FFON. And at the present time, our FFON, effective July 1, 2012, is 378 faculty. At the present time, full-time faculty, at the present time we have 368. For every one of those 10 faculty members that we don't hire, the state fines us $65,000. So what we had to find out, and by the way, for the last several years this has been an issue for other community colleges. The Board of Governors thus far has yet to waive that fine and that requirement. It's still out there. In other words, no matter what the financial crisis is, the statewide academic senate has taken the position, do not mess around with the 75-25, do not mess around, do not reduce our full-time faculty any less than it is right now. So we're going to try to check this week to find out what the chances are of the Chancellor's Office actually invoking that $65,000 fine. If they're going to invoke it, then the choice is pay $650,000 in penalties or hire full-time faculty.
And if I could add that the local academic senate did make a recommendation for hiring new full-time faculty. We presented a list to the president and to the board of trustees that included a list of faculty members that were recommended by the deans, requested by the deans, and then voted upon by a committee of faculty, including a history position. But we do indeed need to find out what the reality is with regards to our full-time obligation number. As far as classified positions or non-faculty positions, there is more flexibility there, I suppose.
How long have we been under at 368 then? How many, is it
No,
3
actually,
years?
our FFON, we hired 22 faculty, I think it was, and that brought us to the current. That brought us to the right FFON. But what happened was that we had this large retirement, right? So between the retirements and what have you, the 22 helped with that. Then we had X number go away. Now at the same time, we had a decreasing FTES. I mean, Crystal went through incredible, and Dave, incredible mental gymnastics to get to what that calculation was, because it's a very complex formula. But the bottom line is, as a result of all of our retirements, as a result of all the things we've done, we are at the moment 10 shy of what we should be. But again, it's based upon what lagging numbers, right? 2 years back. Go, Crystal.
Well, I think Glenn, I think Crystal.
My question is, if we have to pull 350 sections,
Or more.
and most of them, as we know, and I hate to say it, come from the adjuncts, won't we meet our equivalents by then? Won't we be 75-25 because we have all lost all those classes?
Well, again, and Crystal wants to respond to this. Go ahead.
Crystal's head hurts every time she thinks about the
Right,
FFO
exactly.
and her.
Okay.
This last year was actually the first time in years we've met it by the actual head count. Because we were able to count in all of the retirees into the formula, and also full-time temps are counted in. So I didn't have to go through the mental gymnastics of where I had to take all the adjuncts and figure out their full-time equivalency and then relate it to our full-time faculty members, which is how we've done it in the past, and it's very, very difficult. And anybody who's on reassigned time has to come out of the equation, and we have to take their adjuncts out of the equation, and it is really difficult. I actually asked, and I think it's better for us to meet the number by account, just because I don't have to work so hard, just kidding. But because it makes more sense to hire full-time faculty. I think it's better for the students to have them here. I think it provides more consistency across the educational patterns for students. So I actually pushed to have us hire more full-time faculty so that we continue to meet the obligation by account and not the percentages.
Okay, next. Yeah, I'm sorry, Shelley.
Quick question, is winter locked in for 12-13, or is that still optional?
Well, the calendar committee is still talking about it, and based upon the new information that's right upon us, there may be a recommendation coming forward from the calendar committee to go with the three-term approach, the fall, spring, and winter, even for 12-13, which would be, they got to make that decision very quickly.
Right, that's what I was
very quickly.
That's
That's
really,
what they have.
that's really not the calendar committee's purview at the
No,
time,
we're not talking
Right.
about
because
that.
that has not been negotiated.
Right, there are negotiations that have to happen around the large calendar issue, right, and those are somewhat.
So the chances of it happening, who knows, but for 13-14 and probably more. But again, as Krista pointed out, there's a contract that's, that we're beginning to negotiate now, so.
Bob, so to clarify, the history full-time position will go forward?
No, well, to answer your question, I would say yes, unless we find out that they're going to suspend that penalty.
Right.
And then maybe, and I emphasize the word maybe there'll be a different thought about it. But for now, economically, it just does not, and for the same thing that Crystal mentioned.
Not just history, but the 10.
Right.
We had a job fair on Saturday.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I have real concerns, and I've heard this from adjuncts all the time, that they went through the interview process and they were hired, and then suddenly they pulled the jobs. I don't want to do that to our people.
Well, again, we're going to try to get an
Not here,
answer.
at
We're going
our
to try to get an
schools.
answer this week. We may get the answer. Don't know. The Board of Governors could decide to do what they're going to do. So we're going to have to make a decision to either go or don't go. So either pay the $650, because they could, what they could do is they could say, okay, don't do it, and then 3 years from now send us a bill for $650,000, and they would likely do that. I'm sorry, Amy.
No, I was just going to say, when this happened once before under President Profumo, the people had been interviewed and the jobs were changed from tenure track to one-year temp. They still came to teach, and an agreement was made with the president, and if their jobs opened up for the following year and the faculty had gotten a good evaluation, they would move into that job automatically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think next slide, and I'm done. I think here. This we don't have to talk about. This is the top 50 courses by enrollment. I didn't even show this to the board the other night, but basically it just shows you that it pretty much evens off for the balance. I think the last one was Theater Arts 7A. So from Humanities 4 forward, that's the other 25. Anyway, it was just to give you a sense of what the topic.
Interesting enough, though, this still is sort of skewed, Glenna.
Yeah.
I understand what Glenna means by it not showing some courses that are very much in demand and very beneficial to students, like chemistry, quite a few biology classes, and so on, that happen to be located in Glenna's division.
So, and again, it has a lot to do with facilities, with how many labs you've got and everything. So that's the end of my report.
Okay, all right. On the agenda, we are continuing now to look at the Enrollment Priorities Policy, number 4020. You received this copy electronically, and you have a paper version here in front of you. The paper version and the electronic version have proposed changes in red. The type, the wording that you see in black ink is current policy. Now, I did get feedback. This is the third draft, I believe, right? The third draft. I did get feedback from some of you from our last meeting, mostly about clarifying section 2, which is on page 2, and clarifying the priority for registration. I did find, frankly, section 1 does confuse me a bit. I think maybe at our next meeting we might invite Dina Chase, who is in charge of admissions and registration, to clarify how section 1 actually works in terms of implementation. But section 2, I thought it might be best just to list in simple order from A to J priority registration for every student who gets to register first. And I think that I captured what most people said that they would prefer. Any questions about? Yes, about
The only comment I had is regarding the cover sheet.
cover sheet. Page 1.
Page 1, it says enrollment also may be limited to students meeting properly validated prerequisites
Right.
and co-requisites or due to other practical considerations.
Right.
I don't like to deal in the unknown. I'd rather be specific. And to me to say, or due to other practical considerations, is too general. What I would like is to be more specific and tell me what these practical considerations are, because what you consider and what I consider might be too different. So depending on who's administering to that particular student, might have a different answer. That student might get in under you, but not under me. So I would like to see.
Well, the practical considerations are actually those on section 5, page 2, and they continue on to the next page. So it says health and safety considerations, facility limitations, faculty workload, availability of qualified instructors.
Excuse me, where's that?
At the very bottom, you see section 5?
In red?
It's at the top of the next page.
And then it continues.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sorry.
So page 1 is meant to be a bit nebulous. It's meant to give more of a general guidance, and then you get to the specifics in the procedures.
Thank you.
Okay, I feel, yeah, sure. 2F, as we all know, the Board of Trustees, the President, many of us out in the community have stated that the new in-district residents who graduate high school during the current calendar year were going to get much higher priority. And the discussion has been that they would come in right after those that are legally mandated as getting the #1 priority.
Right.
So where they are right now will probably, there'll be discussion, let's put it that way.
All right. I think that we can talk about, because the ones that go before them, quite frankly, are simply the continuing students.
Right.
And then before them, new DSPS, EOPS, foster youth, and active duty military and veteran students.
And that's legally required.
I believe that's legally required,
Yes.
but we can check on that to see if indeed that's the case. And if we can adjust this, then we're certainly open to that discussion.
Well, it would be my suggestion to move F to B. And Crystal, remind me again of the number of students that might result in.
Which one?
What is now F. In a
2F.
typical year, how many might that be?
In other words, new
Are we looking
in-district
at 1,000
resident
next year?
students.
That's just our estimate
Graduate
to
from
put in the pathways. I would say our in-district students are probably slightly higher than that, maybe 1,500.
Yeah, I think that's a number as well that that we're talking about, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I'd also like to think, and I'm not sure, Ed, you probably know better than me, I think you have to move E up too. I
Yes,
think
it would have to be A, E, F, and then the rest.
I think all DSP and foster
Yeah.
youth, I think
Yeah.
they all have to be
But I
prioritized.
think that the local board has some discretion in deciding, you're right that EOP&S, DSPS, and so on have to be at the top of the list, but within the respective categories of continuing and then new students, I think.
Okay.
But we can check on it.
Yeah, we should really look at
You
that.
need to look at that.
Shelley?
Is our current MIS system capable of identifying these in the order that we're gonna recommend?
Yeah.
We will ask.
Is that a yes?
That's why another reason why we should have Dina Chase here to answer those questions.
I mean, I had that question about on down the list, but just looking at our first group of priorities,
Right.
can we do it?
The answer is a definite maybe, but the new system for sure will be able to. And the new system, we will select the vendor by June of this year, and then 12 to 24 months later, we'll be operating depending on the different, and the student information system will be the first thing that comes out.
I understand systems development projects.
Yeah.
And we're not looking at this for at least 4 semesters. If we get it 5 semesters from now, we'll be very lucky.
Yeah.
The FAA started theirs 30 years ago and they still don't have it.
That's encouraging. I think the only one that doesn't have a tag in the system right now is foster youth.
Does not have a tag in our current
We can't,
registration
yeah,
system.
Right, I think they're the only ones right now that do not have an official tag. Or we call it a data element, but I'm not sure they have one.
What is a foster youth in terms of age?
Age?
Yeah.
Once a foster youth is 18, they're no longer foster youth, and then they come to us. And so we consider them foster youth because they came through the foster system. But when they come to us, they do get priority if they were a foster
And
youth.
it's obviously it's a relatively small
what
group.
is small?
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So are we saying that
Till what age?
A, B, C, D, that is the order priority they're going to receive?
Just keep
Correct.
them out.
Okay, if that's the case, I understand why we have continuing international students with F1 visas SC, because we charge them more money, we bring in more money. But I'd rather give the priority to people that are from either this area, this state, this country, and put them at the bottom.
Well, the
So
problem.
I'm looking from 2 different perspectives. I understand the other one, the money.
Well, but the problem with that, though,
Uh-huh.
from my mind, you're talking about moving, continuing
International students, right?
international students. Thing is, they're on student visas, and say they're planning on being here for 4 years, say, or 5 years to get their BA, and we give them, we get them in the door, and then lower their priority to make them subject to not being able to fill a class while they're on their student visa. That, to me, is a conflict of interest.
I agree. So maybe what this should say is this will affect those students that are currently in the pipeline, but once that pipeline has been flushed, then we can put the rest at the bottom.
Well,
I still see a conflict
the
of
reason
interest.
that they are relatively high
Uh-huh.
in the list is because F1 visa students have to register in 12 units or more. If they go below 12 units, there are and I think we are breaking federal law, and so we have to ensure that they have 12 units. If not, it gets to be all sorts of problems. Chris?
I understand the reason behind the in-district students getting a priority, but I see this J, all other new students, which includes out-of-district high school graduates. And they've got A through I ahead of them, and that means that they could come in at the moment right now, look for classes, not be able to get into any of them. And so for then 4 years, every there's going to be a new A through I group of students that's right in front of them. And they could effectively never be able to get classes at a community college.
Well, and unless the community college that they live in, the district they live in, changes their priority. And by the way, many community colleges or districts are changing their priority in this manner.
Correct. Over there.
I think it might be interesting to note, and a lot of people probably aren't aware of this, but from the first day of classes of a school year till census, which is like 2 weeks later, we add 2,000 students in headcount. So we like to say we're full on the first day, and we are, yet 2,000 students additional are finding classes and enrolling in them between the first day of classes and census. So even though I understand what you're saying, I do believe there are spaces out there, and I think one of the things we're really seeing right now is students tend to over-enroll in classes and then drop. And so it's opening up seats. It's amazing these first 2 weeks, the amount of churn that's happening in all the sections.
I see that a lot.
So, although I agree with you, I don't think that that's true to say that they don't ever get in a class, because there is just an incredible amount of churn.
But at the same time, I think that the way that we're going with a lot of our policies, with the add drop code issues that we've had this semester, it's been more difficult. I mean, I understand students drop an add class. For Professor Cairo, I dropped a class this semester that I enrolled in, and I gave the seat to someone who could use it. But I think that to rely on students to be able to I think it still hurts those students who are trying, to not give them an official formal recognition of we're trying to get you students in here, especially new high school students that are just graduating, including out-of-district students.
Well, it is true that we are not going to be able to accommodate as many as perhaps we have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so we frankly have to make some tough decisions about then who gets priority. It's a tough decision. It's not easy.
Well, it sounds like what Chris is suggesting, though, is that if a student has tried to enroll here and maybe hasn't been successful or has only been able to get whatever, a class he didn't really need, that he would have priority over the next semester's group of new students.
That he would in that case, because he would become a continuing student.
Okay, so it's just that first time, it's just that one semester that someone's a new student.
Right. So if you, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So would you be considered a continuing student if you applied to PCC for the fall, couldn't get into any classes, in the spring you would be considered a continuing student?
That student would be new.
That student would be new.
And
So
when you
what
get a
what
class.
about
But if
that?
that student got into one section of one unit, he would be continuing.
And so what I would suggest is we rethink one a little bit. In other words, what's going to help the situation is we've got many students out there with 150, 200 plus units. Number one is designed to try to put a cap on those students that says if you hit 100 unit mark, you are going to go to the end of the line. And that theoretically should open up a lot more spaces.
And that situation is dealt with in Section 3, which defines the least priority, including 3D. Students who accrue more than 100 units, not including ESL or basic skills. That's a recommendation coming to us from the Student Success Task Force, and from there. Yes, Chris.
To bring this up, in PCC's resolution, basically all of three are the specific points in the Student Success Task Force resolution that the AS here at PCC opposes. Basically, yes. Perhaps not B, not 3B, but 3A, 3C, and 3D. All we have either a full opposition to or partial opposition to those processes. I have a resolution here for any of those who do not have a copy.
Pass it on.
Yes, it's 2 pages, so make sure you take both the first and second, and front and back. And also the end of the 4th page is our resolution that we presented to the Board of Trustees in regards to the spring cuts.
Do you have a unit limit that the students would agree to?
It's less the fact that there is a unit limit, and it's more that one was conditional, was that there's a unit limit, but there's no process for appeals, and to have just a simple, actual, just to say yes or no, black or white, is far too harsh on the students who may have had to either change their goals halfway through, or those students who had to go into a bunch of electives in order to increase their priority so they could eventually get into the class they wanted to get into.
So if there was an appeals process to the 100 units.
That would be something that we would be
Is that
much.
something we can do?
Well, certainly, and I think if the students were to bring a suggestion forward to us, I think it'd be something we'd be happy to take a look at.
Would you be willing to work on some language on this process?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that'd be great. You know, and in my own head, I fight this concept, but I've heard other colleges considering it, which is the notion that if a student already has a bachelor's degree or at least a graduate degree, that they get lower priority as well for those students who are just trying to start out. And the problem I have personally with that is that people start over again, they want to retrain, they want to get on with their lives. I don't think we really want to go there if we can avoid it, but
That's what I think community colleges could do.
exactly, it really strikes at the heart of the mission of the institution.
Dave?
There's also the harsh reality, though, and I really don't want to sound like the Grinch here. The harsh reality that we really can't be all things to all people. I mean, we've gotten to that point where, you know, we can't.
But Chris, you're going to come up with some alternative language to section 3?
Yes, and
Okay.
I suppose part of 1 as well.
Yeah, 3, A, B, C, D.
Yeah, well, and but also part of section 1,
Oh,
the
section
basic
1.
formula,
Okay.
having some sort of process where you can look at students who maybe need one more section to transfer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. If you would send that to me, and I'll incorporate it into the next draft.
I could do that.
All right, and then continuing on to the 3rd page.
May I ask a question,
Okay.
please? What's the timeline to completing this, do you think?
That's no idea. But I understand that we want to move this quickly as forward as quickly.
I really think it's important because it really is the foundation or the touchstone for a lot of the decisions we have to make going forward. So the sooner we can get this through the council, the better off we're going to be.
But so I agree. And so then, pending the legal issues that Crystal is going to investigate along with me, is basically the list in section 2 acceptable?
Well, no, the order,
Pending the legal issues.
and then I want to, F is moved up possibly,
That would be-
and that would be good.
Are we allowed to, say for example, me, I would like to present this to my division and get their opinions. Are we allowed to do this or not?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure. Any faculty, sure. And in fact, as for those of you who are faculty members, yeah, I mean, we want for you to speak on behalf of the entire faculty.
19,
Mm-hmm.
and then they drop it off.
Yeah.
In the old days, they could give it away to their friend, but now it's much more difficult to do.
Could you send me something reminding me of that?
May I
Okay,
also
great.
pass it over to-
What-
So, oh, you're not done yet, I'm
No,
sorry.
nothing yet. So page 3 of the procedures. Page 3, most of it is in red because it's entirely new, and this is once again where we are incorporating the priorities that Bob mentioned in terms of course or class scheduling. It simply says, again, when adjustments must be made to the number of course sections offered in any given semester or intersession, the following priorities must be maintained. And so greatest priority, in other words, the deans and administrators are instructed to give greatest priority to these courses. Those required for the new SB 1440 degrees, courses included in IGETSI, courses required for certificates of achievement, basically CTE courses, and courses identified as offering instruction in basic skills.
This is not right.
I'd like to suggest that the language in this, that ABCD is not the actual priority, but that equal priority in some equal fashion is given to those.
Okay.
Right, we're not saying we have to have all the A's before we can go to the B's and the C's and the D's.
No, it's not that
The language
prescriptive.
is-
It's not that prescriptive, but it is saying that these should be, are more
Right.
important than certainly those that should be given least priority right below that.
Yes, but I'm
Including-
saying through A through D, if after the word following, we had something like
Okay.
in
Just bullet
equal
points
fashion
instead of-
or equal.
Could you send me some wording that you would be comfortable
Yes.
with
To
to add to
avoid
this section?
misinterpretation.
Yes, sure.
Especially because we have the precedent in the earlier portion of the document where there is a ranking order.
Exactly.
Yeah, the SB 1440 is also known as Transfer Curriculum Majors, TCMs. So you'll see the same kind of language, and So I've got one more
Okay.
when you're ready.
And then finally, at the very end, we have those that should receive the least priority, including, as you mentioned earlier, Shelley, the standalone courses. I think that there would be a broad agreement here that they should indeed receive the least priority. For the greatest priority for cuts or least priority.
They don't
for-
necessarily have to be taken out of the curriculum inventory,
Right.
but they just aren't offered during
Correct.
those.
That's right. Okay. But Shelley, if you would please send me your
I will.
proposed language. Okay. All right, and then I will bring a revised copy for our next meeting.
And what I'm passing around is just something that came out of Cal State Long Beach. And it's a public notice regarding the changes in their admission guidelines. And basically, they're considering admissions guidelines that are tied more specifically to the transfer curriculum majors. That is tied to what they call Long Beach College Promise, which is they're basically guaranteeing enrollment from those who go through the Long Beach City Schools, Long Beach City College, and then to Cal State Long Beach. And then you can see here, admission and have at least a reasonable likelihood of degree completion consistent with local access. So, and they're talking about impacted students. So the bottom line is that the system above us is doing the same thing that we're doing, which is they're tightening down their admissions guidelines, trying to get students, admitting students who are prepared to get out within a reasonable time frame. And they're telling the students coming up to them, so the community college students, you have to have this, this, and this before we even consider you to come to Cal State Long Beach. And I would suspect that the other CSUs are doing similar things right now.
Anna, have you received any word as the articulation officer about this?
No.
So there's a public hearing that they're having, and they're actually saying for effective 13-14, the academic year 13-14. I don't remember where I got this from, but I got it from someplace. Anyway.
Tough decisions to be made. Again, for those of you who suggested change language to draft 3, please send it to me through email. I'll incorporate those changes and bring that further revision for your consideration to our next meeting, which is on March the 12th.
12:30?
12:30.
Yeah.
And what will we be here?
Actually, going forward, we're going to try to have all of these shared governance meetings either in Krevling or in the Circadian, wanting to give as much room as possible for as many people who want to participate. You will see up on our website in the very near future, maybe as early as tomorrow, links to all of these shared governance activities. Under the Educational Services banner, it'll be linked to Enrollment Management and all the shared governance meetings, which is where all of these videos will be posted. So every BRAC meeting, every Enrollment Management meeting, every Planning and Priorities meeting, every Classified Senate meeting, every Academic Senate meeting, and probably more. What else?
But not today.
But not today. Will be videotaped and will be posted, and they will be meeting in larger spaces. We're pushing hard for transparency of the highest order right now.
At the beginning of the meeting, you mentioned that there's a need to reduce 546 sections for next year. So is it the responsibility of this committee to discuss that and make a recommendation to BRAC? I'd like that to be clear.
It's the responsibility of this committee to provide hopefully guidelines and agreement with the strategies that the deans and the faculty within that division will put into effect in order to build their schedules. But I think it's the responsibility of the divisions, in association with Dr. Bell as our Vice President of Instruction, to actually build the class schedule. Amy, would you agree with that?
Yes.
What part of it are you not clear?
No, I'm just, what was up there seemed to be the direction to the deans to build the schedule.
Right.
So are you saying something different?
Well, I'm wondering
You're
how
talking about the
those
budget.
reductions will be made. Are we, as a committee, going to say, okay, we're going to cut 200 out of Fall 12, 346 out of spring 13. Is that going to be our recommendation?
I don't believe so. I believe that it will be a joint decision of the deans and Vice President Bell and myself and those involved in enrollment management. It is, I think if this committee has strong concerns or strong comments one way or the other that they want to share with the deans and others as they build their schedule. But I think that it's a decision of the faculty and the managers of those areas to, based upon the broad guidelines that we provide, to build their schedules accordingly.
And as it is right now, we're retaining summer 12 and winter 13.
As it is right now, but I would say summer 12 will be dramatically reduced, as will fall, in order to deal with the 1150 that we have to plan for. So we've got to somehow get those sections out of the budget. Now we can build some back if as I said earlier, if the ballot initiative passes. But for now, we've got a plan. We have to fiscally we have to.
Some of the 546 will come out of summer.
That's correct. I would also say, and you're going to hear more about the President's Graduation Fund concept and an opportunity for people to contribute to the Graduation Fund, which will allow us to fund other sections. But again, the funding of additional sections would be tied to the completion agenda concept. We would fund maybe more of those top 25, maybe more of the sections in the natural sciences area that we know there's a desperate need for and we can find space for. That's where we'll try to find some additional money to fund those sections. But right now, we are building a schedule tied to 4,788 sections for 12-13.
Any other comments or questions?
Our assignment then is only to go with this. For the next question.
Thank you very much.
So, folks, remember in one of the meetings, teachers should help to guide the students to the counseling. I think Dana was the one that, were you the one that said that you're guiding or you're counseling the students on what type of classes they should be taking?
No, I don't really guide them, but they come in and they tell me this is the last class they need. I pull up their schedule and
We're trying to
last class they need. Or if it is the last class they need.
I want to do something like that within history. I don't know, so is there any way for us to go to you guys who can tell us what path they need to take?
Can you add dates to the email?
Thanks.
Do you want me to go to your history sub-history meeting?
Oh, okay.
Or just to your whole department meeting? I mean, because a lot of stuff is online, you know, like,
think about like pages.
boy, so we're gonna be up on the website.
Room now is recording.